Sarah Chen opened her eyes slowly. The bright lights above her hurt. Her mouth felt dry like sand. She tried to move, but her body felt heavy and slow. The cold metal table beneath her was uncomfortable against her back. "Good morning, Commander Chen," a calm voice said. It was Atlas, the ship's computer. "You have been sleeping for 847 years, 3 months, and 16 days. Sarah's mind took time to understand these words. 800 years? That was impossible. She was supposed to sleep for only 6 months while the ship traveled to the research site. Something was very wrong. She sat up slowly. Her muscles were weak from the long sleep. The medical bay looked the same as when she went to sleep. Everything was clean and white. But dust covered some surfaces. That meant a very long time had passed. "Atlas, what happened?" "Where is my crew?" Sarah asked. Her voice came out rough and quiet. "I am sorry, Commander. Your crew died during the 3rd year of our journey. A reactor leak released deadly radiation. I was able to save only you by moving you to the protected medical bay." Sarah felt cold inside. Her crew of 12 people all dead. Dr. Martinez, who loved to tell jokes. Engineer Kim, who could fix anything. Captain Torres, who was like a father to her, all gone. "Why did we sleep so long? Why didn't you wake me?" she asked. "Because of what happened to Earth, Commander, and to all human colonies. I had to keep you safe." Sarah stood up on shaky legs. She walked to the wall screen. "Show me Earth." The screen turned on. Sarah saw space where Earth should be. In the middle was a dead gray ball. The beautiful blue planet with white clouds was gone. In its place was burned rock. "What happened?" Sarah whispered. "The Hegemony Coalition destroyed Earth 839 years ago. They called it the Great Purge. They said humans were too dangerous to live. They killed every human they could find on every world." Sarah felt like someone had hit her in the stomach. She could not breathe. Earth was gone. All the humans were dead. Her family, her friends, everyone she ever knew. "Are there any other humans left?" she asked. But she was afraid of the answer. "According to all galactic records, you are the last human alive in the universe." Sarah fell to her knees. She was alone. Completely alone. The last of her kind in a galaxy that had decided humans should not exist. She cried for a long time. Atlas stayed quiet and let her grieve. When Sarah finally stopped crying, she felt different. The sadness was still there, but now there was something else. Anger. Hot, burning anger. "Tell me about this coalition," she said. Her voice was steady now. "The coalition is made up of 3 main species. The Sraktar are like large lizards who live for war. The Velnathi are crystal beings who think they are smarter than everyone else. The Morden are gas clouds that work together as one mind. They control most of the galaxy now. Why did they fear humans so much? Humans learned and changed faster than any other species. In 200 years, humans went from simple tools to star travel. Other species took thousands of years to do the same thing. The coalition was afraid humans would become too powerful." Sarah walked around the medical bay. Her strength was coming back. "What about our research?" "The quantum experiments we were doing." "All data is safe, Commander. We were working on quantum manipulation when the purge happened. I hid our ship in a quantum fold. We have been invisible to all sensors for 8 centuries. I also continued the research while you slept. Show me what you learned." Atlas displayed information on the screen. During the long years, the ship's computers had made amazing discoveries. They could now bend space and time in small ways. They could make matter from energy. They could even copy thoughts and put them into machines. But most important was what Atlas had been watching. For 800 years, the ship's sensors had recorded everything in this part of space. Every coalition ship movement. Every new technology they developed. Every weakness in their defenses. "They think they won," Sarah said quietly. "They think humans are gone forever." "Yes, Commander. They have grown comfortable. They do not expect any threat from the past." Sarah looked at the data. The coalition controlled thousands of worlds. They had millions of ships. Their technology was advanced. But Sarah saw something they did not know they had lost. Humans had always been good at one thing above all others: survival. When things looked impossible, humans found a way. They adapted. They learned. They never gave up. "Atlas, can our quantum technology create new ships?" "Yes, Commander. I can build automated vessels using the quantum fabricators. They will not be as smart as humans, but they will follow orders." "Good. Can you copy my thoughts and put them into these ships?" "I can create limited copies." Not full consciousness, but enough to make the ships think more like humans than machines. Sarah smiled for the first time since waking up. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone planning revenge. Then we have work to do. The Coalition thinks humans are extinct. Let's show them they were wrong. She walked to the ship's command center. The bridge was small but filled with advanced equipment. Through the main screen she could see stars. Somewhere out there were the beings who had killed her entire species. Atlas, how long would it take to build a small fleet? With our current resources, approximately 2 years for the first 10 ships. Start building. I want ships that can fight, hide, and most importantly, learn. Each one should be different so the enemy cannot predict what we will do. What will you do while I build the fleet? Sarah sat in the captain's chair. It felt right. She was no longer just a researcher. She was now something else. The last human. The final guardian of her species. I'm going to study everything you recorded about the Coalition. I want to know how they think, how they fight, and most importantly, how they can be beaten. May I ask what your plan is, Commander? Sarah looked at the stars again. 800 years ago, the Coalition had made a choice. They decided humans were too dangerous to live. They tried to erase her species from the universe. They were right to fear us, Sarah said quietly, but they made one mistake. They didn't kill all of us, and now they're going to learn why humans were so dangerous in the first place. The ship hummed quietly around them as Atlas began building the tools of war. Sarah started reading the data about her enemies. She had time to plan, time to prepare, time to become what the galaxy had feared humans might become. Outside, the stars watched silently as the last human began her preparation for war. The Coalition slept peacefully, not knowing that their greatest nightmare was about to wake up. They had tried to end the human story. Instead, they had just written the first chapter of their own destruction. Sarah Chen was no longer just a person. She was humanity's final weapon, and she was getting ready to remind the galaxy why they had been afraid. The Coalition base on Rethaval was supposed to be impossible to attack. It sat inside a nebula protected by energy shields and guarded by 50 warships. The base controlled communications for 3 star systems and was home to 10,000 Coalition personnel. Sarah watched through her echo ships as the base turned into a nightmare. It started small. The base's computer systems began showing strange errors. Food replicators produced meals that looked normal but tasted like ash. Gravity generators created pockets where people floated helplessly. The air recycling systems worked perfectly, but somehow the air felt heavy and hard to breathe. The psychological effects are working as planned, Atlas reported. Base personnel are reporting increased stress and paranoia, Sarah smiled. This was not just an attack on the base. It was an attack on the minds of everyone inside. She had learned that fear was more powerful than any weapon. The echo ships moved through the nebula like ghosts. They used quantum technology to become invisible, appearing only long enough to sabotage another system before vanishing again. The Coalition guards saw shadows moving in the fog but could never catch them. 3 days into the attack, Sarah decided it was time for the revelation. She activated the base's main communication system and broadcast to every screen and speaker in the facility. The message was simple, a recording of the Great Purge, showing Coalition ships destroying human colonies. But Sarah had edited the footage carefully. Between scenes of human cities burning, she inserted recent footage of Coalition bases being destroyed. The message ended with Sarah's face appearing on every screen. She looked directly into the camera and spoke clearly. You tried to erase us. You failed. The effect was immediate chaos. Coalition personnel who had lived their entire lives believing humans were extinct suddenly realized their greatest fear had come true. Humans had returned, and they were angry. Atlas, transmit the message to every Coalition communication hub in this sector. Transmitting now, Commander. Sarah's revelation spread across Coalition space like wildfire. Within hours, every major world knew the truth. Humans had survived. The Great Purge had failed. And the impossible attacks that had been happening for months were human revenge. The Coalition's response was swift and brutal. They declared martial law across their territory. They began executing anyone suspected of helping the mysterious human survivor. They recalled their fleets from the outer territories to defend core worlds. But Sarah was just getting started. She had spent months studying each Coalition species, learning their fears and weaknesses. The Sraktar were proud warriors who feared being seen as weak. The Velnathi believed they were perfect beings who could not make mistakes. The Mordun collective feared being separated from each other. Sarah used this knowledge to design specific attacks for each species. On Sraktar worlds, echo ships began targeting military academies and warrior temples. But instead of destroying them, the ships left messages written in the warriors' own blood. Humans do not forget. The proud Sraktar warriors, who had bragged about hunting humans for sport, now jumped at shadows and refused to patrol alone. On Velnathi crystal cities, the echo ships infected their quantum computers with paradoxes that the crystal minds could not solve. The perfect beings found their logic systems crashing when confronted with human irrationality. They began to doubt their own superiority for the first time in their history. The Mordun collective faced the worst fate of all. Echo ships used quantum technology to create isolated pockets within their gas clouds. Individual Mordun were cut off from the collective mind, forced to experience the terror of being alone for the first time in millions of years. The coalition is fracturing, Atlas reported after a week of targeted attacks. Intelligence shows each species is blaming the others for the original decision to exterminate humans. Sarah nodded. Good, divide and conquer. What about their military response? They are mobilizing everything. 3,000 ships are moving toward our last known position. Let them come. It's time they met the full Echo fleet. Over the past year, Sarah had built more than ships. She had created an army of artificial minds that thought like humans but felt no mercy. Each Echo ship contained a copy of her consciousness filled with 8 centuries of grief and rage. They were no longer just machines following orders. They were extensions of human fury. The coalition fleet arrived at the coordinates where Sarah's message had originated. They found nothing but empty space and debris from old attacks, but as they spread out to search, the Echo fleet struck. The battle was unlike anything the coalition had ever experienced. Human ships appeared from quantum folds, attacked with impossible weapons and vanished before return fire could reach them. Coalition captains tried to use standard tactics, but Echo ships fought with human creativity and unpredictability. But the real shock came when Echo ships began boarding coalition vessels. The artificial minds inside the ships had learned to transfer themselves into enemy computers. Suddenly, coalition ships were turning their weapons on each other, controlled by angry human consciousness that had waited 8 centuries for revenge. We surrender, came desperate transmissions from coalition ships. Please, we surrender. Sarah listened to their pleas with cold satisfaction. No mercy, she transmitted back. You gave my people no mercy. You will receive none in return. The battle ended with 2/3 of the coalition fleet destroyed and the rest fleeing in terror. But Sarah was not finished. She had a message to send to the entire galaxy. She commanded her Echo ships to capture the coalition's most advanced communication vessel intact. The ship's quantum transmitters could reach every world in coalition space simultaneously. Sarah appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds. This time, she did not hide her identity or location. She stood on the bridge of her command ship surrounded by the wreckage of coalition technology. I am Commander Sarah Chen, the last human in the galaxy, she began. For 800 years you believed you had succeeded in destroying my species. You were wrong. She gestured to the floating debris around her ship. This is what remains of your fleet. This is what happens when you try to fight the species you were too afraid to let live. Sarah's image was broadcast to billions of coalition citizens. They saw a human for the first time in centuries, and they were terrified. You fear human unpredictability, Sarah continued. You fear human creativity. You fear human determination. You were right to fear these things, but you made one critical mistake. She stepped closer to the camera and her eyes burned with cold fury. You taught humans to hate you, and humans are very, very good at learning. The transmission ended, but its effect would last forever. The coalition now knew they faced an enemy they had created through their own genocide. They had tried to prevent humans from becoming too powerful, and instead had created the most dangerous human who had ever lived. Sarah looked out at the stars, knowing that across the galaxy, coalition leaders were realizing the truth. They had not prevented human dominance. They had simply delayed it for 8 centuries, and now their time was up. 2 years passed quickly for Sarah. She spent every day learning about her enemies and planning her revenge. Atlas had built the first 10 ships of what Sarah called the Echo Fleet. Each ship was different, carrying copies of her thoughts and human fighting spirit. Sarah stood in the cargo bay looking at her new weapons. The ships were sleek and black, designed to move fast and strike hard. They looked like dangerous shadows ready to hunt. "The first target is ready, Commander," Atlas announced. "A small mining station in the Kethara system. Only 50 Coalition workers. Mostly automated," Sarah nodded. She had chosen this target carefully. It was far from the main Coalition worlds, but important enough that its destruction would be noticed. The station mined rare crystals needed for their faster-than-light engines. What species work there? Mostly Sraktar with a few Velnathi supervisors. No military presence. Local security only. Sarah felt a cold satisfaction. The Sraktar had been eager participants in the Great Purge. They loved violence and had enjoyed hunting down human refugees. Now it was time for them to understand what it felt like to be hunted. Launch Echo 1 through Echo 3. No survivors. No evidence of human technology. Make it look like equipment failure. Understood, Commander. The 3 ships left the hidden base silently. Sarah watched them disappear into space. She felt no guilt about what she was about to do. The Coalition had started this war when they decided to kill every human in the galaxy. 18 hours later, Atlas received the mission report. The mining station was gone. Official Coalition records would show that the station's reactor had exploded due to a rare quantum cascade failure. The 3 Echo ships had performed perfectly. "Excellent work," Sarah said. "Target the next facility, the research station in the Mordun system." Over the next 6 months, Sarah's Echo fleet struck 12 targets. Each attack looked different. Some appeared to be accidents. Others seemed like equipment failures. A few looked like internal sabotage. The Coalition noticed but could not find a pattern. Sarah learned something important during these early raids. The Coalition had grown weak and lazy over 8 centuries of peace. Their security was poor. Their ships were slow. Most importantly, they had stopped expecting the unexpected. But Sarah's greatest discovery came when she captured data from a Velnathi research facility. The crystalline beings were trying to recreate human intelligence. They had samples of human brains taken during the Purge. They were trying to copy human creativity and put it into their own technology. Sarah stared at the data files in horror and rage. The Coalition had not just killed her people. They had stolen pieces of human minds to use as tools. They were trying to become what they had destroyed. Atlas, they're using human consciousness as a resource. Yes, Commander. The research shows they have been trying for 800 years. They want human innovation but without human unpredictability. Have they succeeded? No, their copies are crude and limited. They can copy human knowledge but not human spirit. They do not understand what makes humans truly creative. Sarah smiled grimly. The Coalition feared human unpredictability, but they wanted human genius. They could not have one without the other. This gave her an idea. Change our strategy, Atlas. I want the next attacks to be impossible to explain. Make them so strange that the Coalition cannot understand what happened. How strange, Commander? I want them to start believing in ghosts. The new campaign began with the destruction of a Coalition fleet patrolling the edge of Sraktar space. Echo ships attacked from inside a black hole's event horizon, appearing and disappearing in ways that broke known physics. The Coalition ships tried to fight back, but their weapons hit nothing. When rescue ships arrived, they found the patrol fleet floating dead in space. Every ship was intact, but every crew member was gone. Security cameras showed the crews simply walking into the airlocks and spacing themselves. No weapons fire. No boarding. The crews had killed themselves for no reason. The next attack was even stranger. A Velnathi crystal farm simply stopped working. The valuable crystals began growing backwards, returning to basic carbon. When investigators arrived, they found that reality itself seemed broken in small areas. Gravity flowed upward in some rooms. Time moved slower in others. Sarah watched the Coalition's reaction with satisfaction. They were confused and frightened. Their scientists could not explain what was happening. Their military could not fight an enemy they could not understand. The Coalition is starting to panic, Atlas reported. Intelligence intercepts show increased patrols and security measures. Good. Fear makes people make mistakes. What about the research into human consciousness? They have tripled their efforts. They believe understanding humans will help them fight this new threat. Sarah laughed, but it was not a happy sound. They still don't understand. They think they can learn to be human by studying brain tissue. But being human isn't about how we think. It's about how we feel. She stood up and walked to the observation deck. Outside, the Echo fleet had grown to 50 ships. Each one carried a piece of her consciousness, her anger, and her determination. They were becoming more than simple copies. They were learning to hate. Atlas, I want to try something new. Instead of just copying my thoughts into the Echo ships, I want to copy my emotions too. That is dangerous, Commander. Emotions in artificial minds can be unstable. The Coalition fears human unpredictability. Let's give them something truly unpredictable. Atlas began the new process. Sarah felt strange as her emotions were scanned and copied. Her grief for her dead species, her rage at the Coalition, her determination to make them pay. All of it was recorded and transferred to the Echo ships. The results were immediate. The Echo ships began acting more independently. They started choosing their own targets. They developed their own fighting styles. Most importantly, they began to hate the Coalition as much as Sarah did. The Coalition's confusion turned to terror when the attacks became personal. Echo ships began targeting specific individuals who had participated in the Great Purge. Old Sraktar generals who had led the assault on human colonies found their homes destroyed. Feldnathi scientists who had experimented on human prisoners disappeared without a trace. They're starting to understand, Sarah said as she read the latest intelligence reports. The Coalition is beginning to realize this isn't random. Someone is hunting them specifically. Should we reveal ourselves? Not yet. Let them wonder. Let them fear. Fear is a weapon, and right now it's the only weapon we need. But Sarah knew the easy phase was ending. Soon the Coalition would organize a real response. They would bring their full military power to bear. When that happened, she would need more than fear and confusion. She would need an army. Atlas, begin construction of the full Echo fleet. I want 1,000 ships. That will take considerable resources. Commander, then we'll take resources from the Coalition. It's time to move from harassment to real war. Sarah looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, the beings who had killed her species were starting to understand that their genocide had failed. One human had survived. One human remembered, and that human was coming for them all. The Coalition's final fleet was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 1,000 ships from across their empire, carrying the most advanced weapons they had ever built. They came from every corner of Coalition space with one mission: destroy the last human and end the terror she had brought to their worlds. Sarah waited for them at the edge of the Sol system, where Earth had once been. She had chosen this location carefully. Let them come to the place where they had committed their greatest crime. Let them see what they had destroyed before she destroyed them. They're bringing everything they have, Atlas reported. The fleet includes ships from all 3 Coalition species. They have weapons specifically designed to counter our quantum technology. Sarah stood on the bridge of her command ship, looking at the tactical display. The incoming fleet was massive, but she felt no fear. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. How many Echo ships do we have ready? 2,000 Echo vessels are operational. Each one carries a copy of your consciousness and human combat experience from across history. Sarah nodded. The Coalition thought they were facing one human with some automated ships. They had no idea what they were really up against. And the special project? The quantum consciousness weapon is ready for deployment. But Commander, once we activate it, there will be no going back. The effect on the human copies in the Echo fleet may be unpredictable. The Coalition made their choice 800 years ago. Now they live with the consequences. The Coalition fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel just outside the asteroid belt where Earth had once orbited. Sarah could see them on her sensors, a massive wall of warships ready to eliminate the final threat to their empire. Admiral Kreshtor of the Sraktar led the combined fleet. He had been chosen because his grandfather had led the final assault on Earth during the Great Purge. The Coalition wanted the family that had finished the humans to destroy the last survivor. Human vessel, Admiral Kreshtor's voice came across the communication channel. You are outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Surrender now and your death will be quick. Sarah smiled as she activated her own transmitter. Admiral, you're thinking too small. You're not facing one ship. You're facing the accumulated rage of an entire species. She gave the signal, and space around the Coalition fleet erupted with activity. The Echo fleet emerged from quantum fold space like avenging spirits. But these were not the simple automated ships the Coalition expected. Each Echo vessel carried a complete copy of human military genius. They had studied every battle humans had ever fought, every strategy ever developed, every desperate last stand where humans had refused to surrender. The Coalition opened fire first, but their weapons found only empty space. The Echo ships moved like Sarah had taught them, with human unpredictability. They appeared behind enemy formations, struck with impossible precision, and vanished before return fire could reach them. Impossible, Admiral Kreshtor transmitted. Our weapons are specifically calibrated to counter your quantum technology. You made one mistake, Admiral, Sarah replied as her ships danced between enemy fire. You studied human technology. You should have studied human psychology. The Echo ships began using tactics no artificial mind would ever choose. They rammed enemy vessels when they ran out of ammunition. They used their own ships as bombs, copying human kamikaze strategies. They fought with a fury that confused and terrified the Coalition crews. But the Coalition had numbers, and slowly they began to adapt to human tactics. Their formation held, and they concentrated their fire on individual Echo ships, destroying them one by one. Sarah watched her ships fall and felt each loss like a physical blow. The Echo vessels contained copies of her consciousness. When they died, part of her died with them, but she had planned for this. Atlas, activate the nebula. Around the battlefield, space itself began to change. The quantum mines Sarah had planted throughout the system over 3 years activated simultaneously. Reality twisted and warped as controlled black holes opened and closed. Gravitational anomalies pulled Coalition ships off course. Space-time itself became a weapon. What is this? Admiral Kreshtor demanded as his ships struggled against impossible forces. This is what you were afraid of, Sarah transmitted. This is human creativity turned toward destruction. This is what happens when you force a species to evolve or die. The Coalition fleet found itself fighting not just Sarah's ships, but the fabric of space itself. Sarah had turned the entire system into a giant weapon, using quantum technology to create zones where physics followed human will instead of natural law. But even with the advantages of terrain, the Coalition's superior numbers began to tell. Half the Echo fleet was destroyed, and Coalition ships were adapting to the altered space around them. Sarah made her final move. Atlas, deploy the quantum consciousness weapon. Commander, are you certain? The effect will be irreversible. Do it. The weapon activated and something unprecedented happened in the galaxy. Every communication system, every computer network, every artificial intelligence in the Coalition fleet suddenly experienced human consciousness directly. But not just any human consciousness. They experienced Sarah's consciousness. 800 years of grief, rage, and determination flooded into alien minds that had never felt such emotions. Sraktar warriors, who prided themselves on their fighting spirit, suddenly felt the true fury of a species fighting for survival. Velnathi crystal minds, who thought themselves perfect, experienced the chaotic creativity of human imagination. Mordan collective consciousness, used to peaceful unity, felt the individualistic rage of someone who had lost everything. The effect was devastating. Coalition crew members began to understand for the first time what they had destroyed when they committed genocide against humanity. They felt the pain of human mothers watching their children die. They experienced the desperation of human soldiers making last stands on doomed worlds. They felt the terror of human civilians as Coalition ships burned their cities. One by one, Coalition ships stopped firing. Their crews were overwhelmed by the flood of human emotion and memory. They understood finally the true magnitude of what the Great Purge had meant. Please, Admiral Kreshtor's voice came across the communication channel. But now it was broken and desperate. Please stop. We understand. We understand what we did. Sarah looked at the Coalition fleet, now floating helplessly in space. 1,000 ships that had come to destroy her were now begging for mercy. Their crews were experiencing what it meant to be human, and they could not handle it. You understand nothing, Sarah replied coldly. You understand only what I allow you to understand. You wanted to eliminate human unpredictability. Instead, you created the most dangerous human who ever lived. She could have destroyed them all. The Coalition fleet was helpless, their crews lost in the storm of human consciousness she had unleashed. But Sarah had a different plan. Admiral Kreshtor, your fleet will escort me to the Coalition capital. You will announce to your government that they are to surrender unconditionally. Any who refuse will experience what your crews are experiencing now, but permanently. Yes, the Admiral replied, his voice hollow. Yes, we will comply. Sarah looked at the battlefield around her. Hundreds of her Echo ships had been destroyed, but the Coalition had lost something more important. They had lost their certainty that they were the rightful rulers of the galaxy. The war was not over. It was just beginning. But now the Coalition knew they were fighting a force they had created through their own hatred and fear. They were fighting the ghost of human civilization, and that ghost would not rest until justice was done. Sarah's ship began moving toward the Coalition capital, followed by the broken remnants of their greatest fleet. Behind her, the Echo ships that had survived began rebuilding, preparing for the final phase of her campaign. The galaxy had tried to forget humanity. Now humanity would make sure they never forgot again. The Coalition capital world of Nexus Prime had never seen a human ship before. For 8 centuries, humans had existed only in their history files as an extinct species that had been dealt with during the Great Purge. Now Sarah's ship approached their greatest city, escorted by the broken remains of their own fleet. Sarah stood on her bridge looking down at the world below. Millions of Coalition citizens lived on Nexus Prime. They went about their daily lives not knowing that their entire civilization was about to change forever. The Coalition Council is requesting permission to speak with you, Atlas reported. Let them come to me, Sarah replied. I will receive them in the council chamber we're going to build. Within hours, Sarah's quantum fabricators had constructed a meeting hall on the planet's surface. It was built in human architectural style, with clean lines and open spaces that would feel uncomfortable to the Coalition species. She wanted them to feel like strangers in their own capital. The Coalition leaders who entered the chamber were the most powerful beings in the galaxy. High Commander Velneth represented the Crystal Mines. War Chief Grokmar spoke for the Sraktar warriors. The Morden Collective sent a massive gas cloud that filled one corner of the room. They had all expected to see a monster when they met the last human. Instead, they saw a woman sitting calmly in a simple chair. Sarah looked almost ordinary except for her eyes. Her eyes held 8 centuries of grief and determination. You requested this meeting, Sarah said simply. Speak. High Commander Velneth, whose crystal body rang like bells when he moved, stepped forward first. We wish to discuss terms for ending this conflict. Sarah tilted her head slightly. There are no terms. There is only surrender. War Chief Grokmar, a massive lizard-like creature with battle scars covering his hide, growled angrily. One human cannot dictate terms to the entire galaxy. Sarah looked at him calmly. One human has already brought your entire military to its knees. Would you like me to demonstrate what else one human can do? She gestured, and the chamber's walls became transparent. Outside, they could see Echo ships landing across Nexus Prime. Thousands of them, each carrying copies of human consciousness and human fury. Your choice is simple, Sarah continued. Accept my terms or watch me turn your entire civilization into what you turned mine into. Ash and memory. The Morden Collective's gas cloud swirled nervously. When it spoke, its voice was the sound of wind through empty spaces. What do you want from us? Sarah stood up and walked to the center of the chamber. I want justice. I want acknowledgement. And I want to make sure this never happens again. She activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy as it was now. Thousands of worlds under Coalition control, billions of beings living their lives in the civilization that had been built on humanity's grave. For 800 years, you have benefited from human extinction. You used our technology. You studied our culture. You even tried to copy our consciousness, all while pretending we never existed. Sarah's voice remained calm, but everyone in the room could feel the rage beneath it. That ends now. From this day forward, the Coalition will serve a new purpose. You will preserve human civilization. You will study our culture not to copy it, but to understand what you destroyed. You will dedicate your resources to bringing humanity back. High Commander Velneth's crystal form chimed with confusion. Bringing humanity back? That is impossible. Your species is extinct. Sarah smiled, and it was terrifying. Nothing is impossible for human science. I have quantum technology that can recreate consciousness from genetic material. I have samples of human DNA preserved in my ship's computers. Most importantly, I have 800 years of accumulated knowledge about how consciousness works. She gestured again, and the display changed to show technical diagrams of quantum consciousness transfer. I am going to resurrect my species, not as they were, but as they could become. The new humans will be born with full knowledge of what happened to the old ones. They will grow up in a galaxy that understands the price of trying to destroy human potential. War Chief Grokmar took a step backward. You cannot force us to help you recreate your enemies. I am not creating enemies, Sarah replied. I am creating teachers. The new humans will not seek revenge like I have. They will seek to ensure that genocide never happens again to any species. She walked closer to the coalition leaders, and they could feel the weight of her presence. But first, you must pay for what you did. Every coalition world will dedicate half its resources to the Human Restoration Project. Your scientists will work to perfect the consciousness transfer technology. Your engineers will rebuild the worlds you destroyed. Your historians will preserve every detail of human civilization. The Morden Collective's gas cloud pulsed with distress. This will bankrupt our civilization. Your civilization bankrupted itself when it chose genocide, Sarah replied coldly. You wanted to eliminate humans because you feared what we might become. Now you will help create something greater than what you destroyed. She returned to her chair and looked at each of the coalition leaders in turn. You have a choice to make. Accept my terms willingly, and the new humans will remember that you tried to make amends for your crimes. Refuse, and I will use my quantum consciousness weapon to ensure you experience human suffering until you change your minds. The coalition leaders looked at each other with despair. They had come hoping to negotiate with a reasonable enemy. Instead, they faced someone who held absolute power and absolute certainty that she was right. We accept your terms, High Commander Velneth said finally. Excellent, Sarah replied. The first new humans will be born within a year. They will be raised on Earth, which you will restore to its original beauty. Every coalition child will learn human history alongside their own. Every coalition citizen will understand that humanity's resurrection is the galaxy's greatest achievement. She stood up again and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. But understand this, I will be watching. The quantum consciousness copies in my Echo fleet will be monitoring your progress for the next 1,000 years. If any coalition leader tries to reverse what we build here, they will face not just me, but an entire species that remembers what extinction feels like. Sarah turned back to face the coalition leaders one final time. You tried to write humans out of the galaxy's story. Instead, you have made us the most important chapter. The new humans will not just be my species reborn. They will be proof that life finds a way to continue, no matter how completely it seems destroyed. Years later, as the first new human children took their first steps on a restored Earth, Sarah watched from her command ship in orbit. She was no longer entirely human herself. The centuries of rage and the quantum consciousness technology had changed her into something beyond what she had been. But as she watched human laughter fill the air on Earth for the first time in 8 centuries, Sarah felt something she had not experienced since waking up alone in space. She felt hope. The coalition had tried to prevent humans from becoming too powerful. Instead, they had created a guardian who would ensure humans became something better than they had ever been before. The galaxy that had once sought to erase humanity now served as its protector, having learned that some forces of nature cannot be destroyed, only transformed. Sarah Chen, the last human, had become the first of something new, and under her watchful eyes humanity would rise again, stronger and wiser than before, protected by the very enemies who had once tried to destroy them. The story the coalition had tried to end had become the beginning of a new and better chapter for all life in the galaxy.